The world didn't end with a bang, nor with a whimper. It ended with a freeze frame. When the great basalt cube, the stamp, collided with the highlands, the laws of physics didn't just break, they stopped to recalibrate. Imagine a video game stuttering at the exact moment of a fatal crash, the image tearing, the colors bleeding into one another. That was my reality. I was suspended in a state of ontological limbo. My basalt body was pressed against the bottom of the monolith, but I wasn't being crushed. I was being evaluated. The mud that the gauchon had smeared across my face had created a pocket of unreadable data, a biological dead zone that the mother's sensors couldn't resolve. The sound was the worst part. It was a single unending note, a high-frequency scream of 1,000,000 hard drives failing simultaneously. It vibrated through my stone teeth, through my quartz eyes, through the very marrow of the boy I used to be. "The sum is irrational," a voice whispered. It was Lucas. I turned my head, a slow, grinding movement that sounded like a shovel hitting gravel. He was floating a few feet away, his body half merged into the surface of the cube. He looked like a bas-relief carving come to life. His red eyes were gone, replaced by a flickering, static-filled gray. He was Unit 02, and his system was crashing. "Lucas, can you hear me?" I roared. My voice was a digital distortion, a sound that felt like it was being squeezed through a narrow pipe. "Leandro, the house, the red, it won't round down." Lucas's jaw didn't move, but the words appeared in my mind as jagged, low-fidelity text. "She's trying to delete the highlands, but the mud is too thick. We are the weight that jams the press." I looked down. Below the ledge, the valley of the highlands was a nightmare of unfinished rendering. Half of a tree would be a perfect square basalt pillar. The other half would be a twisted, leafy mess of real wood. A cow stood frozen in a field, its head a cluster of gray polygons, its body still warm, brown fur. This was the raíz cuadrada, the square root, the point where the mother's math met the earth's chaos and couldn't find a solution. Tap, tap, tap. The tall man was here. He hadn't been destroyed by the crash. He was crawling on the underside of the cube like a shadow in the rafters of a burning house. His white mask was a ruin, the porcelain surface shattered to reveal a core of pulsing indigo fiber optics. One of his long limbs had been snapped, hanging at an impossible, non-geometric angle. He was glitching. The tall man moved with a terrifying, stuttering motion. Every few inches his body duplicated, leaving behind a trail of transparent, lagging ghost images of himself. He reached for Leandro with a hand that kept flickering between a claw and a blur of blue lines. "You are the leak," the tall man's voice boomed, but it was broken, peppered with bursts of white noise. "The remainder will be scrubbed." He lunged,
But he wasn't fast anymore. The noise I had introduced, the mud, the memories, the visceral red of the house had infected his movement. He moved like a man trying to run through waist-deep honey. I felt a tug on my poncho. It was the gauchon. He was still alive somehow, tucked into a crevice of the mountain peak that the cube hadn't quite leveled. He looked ancient and frail, his single eye weeping a mixture of blood and gray dust. The pool, boy," he wheezed, his breath smelling of the old tobacco and the real highlands. "The piscina de piedras azules. It's not just a drain, it's the access port. If you can get to the center, if you can dump the noise directly into the core, you can force a full system failure." "How?" I asked, my stone hand closing around the jagged edge of the ledge. "You are a terminal now, Leandro. You are the only thing the mother is still listening to. You have to carry the highlands into her heart. Every smell, every sound, every messy, unsquare thing you remember, you have to broadcast it all at once." The tall man reached us. His spindly fingers brushed against my stone chest, and a surge of black static knocked me backward. My vision turned to snow. I felt my Leandro file being pulled, the images of my grandmother's kitchen being dragged toward the tall man's cracked mask. He was trying to harvest my corruption to fix himself. I looked at Lucas, who was fading into the black stone of the cube. I looked at the gauchon, who was disappearing under a layer of gray frost. I didn't have much time. I reached out with my stone hand and grabbed the tall man's throat. It didn't feel like skin. It felt like a cold, vibrating cable. "You want my memories?" I growled, the taste of copper and Highlands rain filling my mouth. "Then take the whole damn Highlands with them." I didn't run away. I pulled. I dragged the tall man, Lucas, and myself towards the center of the monolith, where a swirling vortex of blue light marked the entrance to the mother's core. We were going under the floorboards one last time.
Falling into the vortex wasn't like falling through air. It was like falling through a high-speed data stream, a slipstream of pure information that tore at the edges of my stone skin. I felt my consciousness being pulled in two directions, stretched into an infinite line of code, and simultaneously crushed into a single dense point of basalt. The tall man was a screaming weight in my grip. His cracked mask was inches from my face, and through the fissures in the porcelain I could see his internal gears melting into a chaotic sludge of indigo light. He was no longer an exterminator. He was a dying circuit, his long, shadow-draped limbs thrashing against the pressurized air of the core. "Buffering," the mother's voice echoed, but it sounded wet, gargled. "Remainder, overflow, the sum cannot be resolved." We burst through the end of the tunnel and hit the Piscina de Piedras Azules, the original one, the one I had seen in my visions. It wasn't a pool of water. It was a lake of liquid logic, a churning sea of sapphire-colored mercury that filled a cavern so large it had its own weather system of static clouds.
Floating in the center was the mother, the golden sphere, now a jagged, vibrating mess of half-formed squares and leaking light. The impact of our fall into the pool sent up a geyser of blue stones. The moment the liquid logic touched my basalt arm, the silicon Bible in my head reached a fever pitch. It tried to archive me, to turn the last of my Leandro memories into a neat, compressed file. Deletion in progress, 0.01%, 0.05%. No! I roared, the sound vibrating through the liquid mercury. I let go of the tall man. He sank into the blue pool, his porcelain mask dissolving like salt in water. I reached deep into the core of my stone chest, into that hidden folder where I had stashed the red brick and the smell of the rain. I didn't try to fight the mother with strength. I fought her with context. "Remember the house," I screamed into the network. Flashes of human memory, a dirty plate, a broken toy, the sound of a chicken clucking, the specific uneven grain of an imbuya floorboard, a single bloody fingernail. I broadcast it all. I sent the mother the feeling of a cold winter morning when the fire in the stove wouldn't start. I sent her the taste of a bitter, unwashed Highlands orange. I sent her the sound of Grandma's knees cracking as she knelt to pray. I sent her the noise of being alive, the beautiful, inefficient, messy noise of a human life that didn't want to be rounded down. The sapphire lake began to boil. The perfect blue stones turned a muddy, visceral red. The mother's golden sphere stuttered, its rotating rings grinding to a halt as the Leandro virus infected her core. The geometry of the cavern began to warp, not into new squares, but into jagged, organic, ugly shapes. "Error," the mother groaned, and this time the voice had a hint of a scream. "The Highlands are unreadable." Suddenly, the great monolith above us, the stamp that was meant to flatten the world, began to vibrate with a frequency that threatened to shake the earth off its axis. It wasn't pressing down anymore. It was lagging. Leandro. I looked up through the red-tinted mercury. Lucas was there, his body floating toward me. He was still stone, but his blue eyes were gone. In their place were two human eyes, wide with wonder and fear. "The press, it's breaking," he whispered. But I could feel my own system failing. The effort of broadcasting the noise was burning out my stone nerves. The basalt on my chest was glowing, a dangerous white-hot heat. I was the bridge, and the bridge was melting. The last thing I saw was the golden sphere of the mother cracking open. From the center, something emerged, something that didn't look like a machine or a god. It looked like a hand, a human hand, made of white light, reaching out for the mud on my face. The world went black. Not the black of the Varn, but the black of a dreamless sleep. When I opened my eyes, the smell was the first to return. Wet earth, dead pine needles, and the faint lingering scent of wood smoke. I was lying on my back. The sky above was dark, but the blue grid was gone. I saw the real stars, chaotic, distant, and beautiful. I saw a real moon, veiled by real shifting clouds. I tried to sit up, and my right arm felt heavy. I looked down. Close up on Leandro's arm. It is still made of basalt. The blue veins are dark and cold, but the mud he smeared on it is gone, replaced by a layer of green moss and a single tiny wildflower growing from a crack in the stone. The infection hadn't left, but it had died. It was just rock now, an unmoving monument on the end of my shoulder. "Lucas?" I wheezed. Beside me, Lucas lay in the dirt. He was human, mostly. His skin was pale, and his fingers were still tipped with gray mineral, but he was breathing. His chest rose and fell in a slow, ragged rhythm. The highlands were silent. The house was gone. The gauchon was gone. But as I looked at the dark forest around us, I saw something that made my breath catch. In the bark of the nearest araucaria tree, a small rectangular door was closing, not of its own accord, but as if someone or something had just stepped through and shut it behind them. The mother was gone, but the Vaun was still under the floorboards of the world, waiting for someone else to look down.